There's a certain way some people move through life that's hard to explain unless you've lived close to it. They don't talk much about what they're carrying. They don't complain easily. They don't feel the need to explain themselves over and over. When something needs to be done, they do it. And when things are hard, they adjust quietly and keep going. If you grew up around someone like this, you probably learned early not to ask too many emotional questions. Not because they were unkind, but because that's just not how they operated. Feelings existed, but they stayed under the surface. What mattered more was responsibility. Showing up, doing your part without turning it into a conversation. This will feel especially familiar if you're thinking of someone born between the mid-1940s and the early 1960s, or if you were raised by someone from that time. Their way of moving through the world wasn't shaped by constant self-expression or personal exploration. It was shaped by structure, expectations, and a quiet understanding that life doesn't always wait for you to feel ready. Baby boomers grew up in a world that was rebuilding itself. Many were raised by parents who had lived through war, scarcity, and uncertainty that most people today only know through stories. Homes were structured. Routines mattered. Expectations were clear, even when emotions weren't explained. You did what needed to be done. You respected authority. You didn't question too much, and you didn't expect the world to rearrange itself around your comfort. That environment didn't necessarily feel harsh. It simply felt normal. When you grow up in a setting like that, something subtle starts to form. You begin to associate worth with usefulness. Being dependable feels safer than being expressive. Stability becomes something you create by controlling yourself, not by asking others to understand you. Over time, this turns into a kind of steadiness. From the outside, it can look like emotional distance. On the inside, it's often self-management that's been practiced for decades. That's why many baby boomers don't talk much about how they're feeling, unless there's real trust. And even then, they may soften it, shorten it, or wrap it in something practical. It isn't that they don't feel deeply. They do. They just learned early that feelings were private and problems were handled quietly. You fixed what you could. You endured what you couldn't. And you didn't expect recognition for either. In their working lives, this mindset shows up as a strong sense of duty. Many boomers stayed in jobs for long stretches of time, sometimes far longer than they wanted to, because work wasn't only about fulfillment. It was about responsibility, being reliable, providing, contributing, not becoming a burden. Changing direction too often felt risky. Leaving without a clear plan felt careless. Even when work drained them, there was often an internal voice saying, "This is what adults do. You stay. You handle it." That same way of thinking can make it hard for them to fully understand younger generations who speak openly about burnout, boundaries, or dissatisfaction. From a boomer's perspective, discomfort was part of life, not something you built your identity around. You didn't center yourself constantly. You centered the task, the family, the structure. So when language focuses heavily on personal well-being, it can sound unfamiliar, sometimes even indulgent, not because they don't value health, but because endurance came first. In relationships, many boomers show love through action rather than words. They fix things. They show up. They provide. They remember responsibilities, even when they forget to say, "I love you," out loud. Emotional conversations can feel awkward or unnecessary, not because they don't care, but because care was historically proven through consistency. If they were there when it mattered, that was the evidence. This difference can create misunderstandings. A younger partner or child may want reassurance, openness, or vulnerability. Meanwhile, the boomer feels they've already shown everything through years of effort and presence. When that gap appears, the boomer may feel confused or hurt, thinking, "Haven't I done enough?" While the other person is thinking, "I just want to hear it." There's also a strong sense of self-reliance that runs through this generation. Many learned not to ask for help unless it was absolutely necessary. Asking too much felt like weakness. Needing too much felt unsafe. Independence became protection. So even when overwhelmed, they may downplay it. They may say they're fine when they're not. They may carry weight quietly, believing it's better not to involve others. This becomes especially visible as they age. Some struggle with slowing down, resting, or relying on people because their identity has been tied to productivity for so long. Retirement for some feels less like freedom and more like losing structure. Without clear responsibilities, they can feel unsettled, even if they never say it out loud. Work gave rhythm to their days and meaning to their effort. Letting that go isn't just practical, it's deeply internal. At the same time, many baby boomers hold a strong respect for institutions and systems, even when they criticize them. Schools, workplaces, governments, traditions, these were things you navigated, not dismantled. You adapted to the system more than you expected it to adapt to you. That's why rapid change can feel unsettling. Stability mattered. Predictability mattered. Even flawed systems felt safer than constant uncertainty. Their communication style often reflects this. They value directness, clarity. Say what you mean. Don't over-explain. Long emotional processing can feel draining. Resolution often matters more than expression. If there's a problem, what's the solution? Talking without action can feel pointless to them. Underneath that practical exterior, though, many boomers carry quiet reflections about the life they lived. Thoughts about choices made, paths not taken, sacrifices they didn't question at the time. They don't always call this regret. It's more like a quiet accounting, a sense of, this is the life I built, with all its strength and its cost. They often define success differently than younger generations. Success was stability, a home, a family, staying married, keeping a steady career. These were signs that you had done your part. So when success becomes about visibility, passion, or constant reinvention, it can feel strange, not wrong, just unfamiliar. Their relationship with change is often misunderstood. It's not that they can't adapt. Many adapted, again and again. Technology shifted. Economies changed, social rules evolved, they adjusted, but they tend to prefer gradual change. Change that builds instead of disrupts. When everything moves too fast, it can feel like the ground never settles. Family dynamics shaped much of this. Many boomers grew up with parents who were authority figures, not emotional companions. You listened. You respected. You didn't expect explanations. As parents themselves, some carried that structure forward, believing love didn't need constant expression. Later, when adult children seek closeness through conversation, that difference can create distance. Still, loyalty runs deep in this generation. Loyalty to people, to commitments, to relationships that have lasted decades. Once you're in their circle, they tend to stay. They may not express affection often, but they remember. They show up when it counts. Many also carry a strong sense of personal responsibility. When something goes wrong, their instinct is often to look inward, even when circumstances were beyond their control. This builds accountability, but it can also place heavy weight on their shoulders. In social settings, they may seem reserved at first. Small talk has a purpose. Trust takes time. But once it's there, conversations can become surprisingly grounded, shaped by experience rather than theory. Even their humor reflects this. Dry, understated, sometimes self-deprecating, not meant to draw attention, but to smooth the moment and keep things moving. As the world becomes louder, faster, and more focused on inner narratives, baby boomers can feel slightly out of step. Not lost, just misaligned. The rules they learned still make sense to them, even when the environment has changed. But there's wisdom in that steadiness, in their patience, in their understanding that life doesn't always offer neat explanations or perfect timing. They've lived long enough to know that many things unfold slowly, and not every emotion needs immediate attention to pass. Later in life, many reach a quiet clarity, less need to prove themselves, less urgency to impress, more focus on peace, routine, and familiar rhythms. They may not explain this shift, but you can feel it in how they choose their time and company. Understanding the psychology of baby boomers isn't about praise or criticism. It's about context. Seeing how a generation shaped by rebuilding, structure, and responsibility learned to move through the world with restraint and reliability. When you look through that lens, their silence becomes self-control, not absence. Their firmness becomes care expressed through boundaries. Their resistance to constant emotional discussion becomes another way of holding life together. And sometimes that understanding creates a little more patience, a little more space, not to change them, but to meet them where they are, with the same quiet respect they have often shown the world. If this felt familiar or brought someone to mind, you can like the video so more people find it. Subscribe if you want more calm conversations like this. And if there's someone this reminds you of, sharing it might open a gentle moment of understanding. I'd love to read in the comments what felt most familiar or meaningful to you.